Buenos dias. Yeah, that's the only Spanish I know. Very good to be here today. I'm going to kick off the conference with English. I think that's going to be okay. I love Peru. Thank you for having me. This is my first time here in the country. And I have to say, a few quick observations. My last name, as you can see, is Wong. Wong is everywhere. There's a Wong there. There's a famous dude by the name of Marcelo Wong, who's a sculptor apparently. You have Shea Wong, the restaurant, which I have to eat at, and I think I'll be able to get a reservation because my dad is the chef, I think. And then Erasmo Wong, thank you for making Wong everywhere. So thank you. I appreciate your support of the Wong community. And to be honest, I have to make one more point, and that is entrepreneurs, we deal with a lot of stress, right? It's very stressful, roller coaster, up and down, a lot of things going on. As an investor, a lot of stress. But I always like to gauge how a country can handle stress by its traffic. And I say today and yesterday, my heart cannot handle this. You're like, what? So, good job. You can handle any stress. I'm very confident in all of you. So, thank you. Yes. Okay. So, this is going to be up the entire time. So don't worry, I'm not going to change slides. This is my book. Apparently, cheat codes can be called cheats or truco, right? Truco, yeah? Okay, yeah, my Spanish is okay? Yeah, okay. So, today I'm going to take my time to share a few cheat codes, but I'm not telling you to cheat, right? Cheating is bad. You can go to jail, or you can get a divorce. What I mean is cheating in terms of the game, the cheat codes. You know, in gaming, you can use cheat codes and you can get ahead faster. So the inspiration for my book was to use cheat codes to apply to real life, right? So my goal is to share with you a few cheat codes that are sort of different ways of thinking about getting ahead, because we all want to get ahead. And I want to use and share some cheat codes, both from the book, but that are also not from the book, so that there's a reason why you invited me here, so I can share with you something exclusive and fun, so we can all take away as an audience of innovators, entrepreneurs, investors, and then people who just want to progress and to grow in life. But I'm going to first share a bit more of my entrepreneurial story, right? You're probably wondering why I'm on stage, why I look like I'm 12 years old. I know, I still can't grow facial hair. This is from 4 days. Anyways, so my story, really quick. I was born and raised in Vancouver, Canada. I'm Canadian. My parents are from Hong Kong. They're actually not in this actual venue right now. They're here in Peru. We're going to travel a bit together. But I was born in Vancouver. I started doing graphic design when I was young. So I started to learn with Photoshop and started to design and create websites and logos and print design. And then also, I started my first company in web design. Now, why I even first started my company, as a Canadian, you play ice hockey, right? So you know every Canadian plays ice hockey. There's really no other sport. I actually broke my knee playing ice hockey. I was in a wheelchair for 6 months. And you know, when you're in a wheelchair, there's only a few things you can do, right? You can either start a company or stay in a wheelchair and do nothing. So I decided to start a company. So that's how I started my first company. Now, I also happened to skip a few grades. So the education system in Canada is a bit loose, so they let you skip grades. So I skipped 4 grades, and I ended up graduating from university when I was 18. So then I ended up moving down to Silicon Valley, and I started a company. First I actually worked at another company. This company, some of you may remember, it was called Dig, D-I-G-G.com. It was a lot like Reddit. And Reddit obviously is here, and Dig, you know, some things happen, in the startup world, things go up, things go down. I was working at Dig for 6 months, and then I got laid off. So I got laid off at the ripe old age of 19. So you learn a lot when you lose your job at 19. And as a Canadian, as you know, you need a visa to work in the US. So I lost my visa. And, I was like, okay, what am I gonna do with my life? And so instead of relying on other people, I decided to rely on myself and start my company. So as you can see here, I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Keep. Today, we're 120 people across 6 cities in the US. We actually just hired our first employee here in Lima. So we are expanding into South America. Thank you. We're in the mobile advertising business, and as you can see, everyone here has phones. The advertising business on smartphones is growing very quickly in South America, and we see these emerging markets with rapidly growing middle class and increasing connectivity as a massive area of opportunity for advertising. So it's really exciting to see. The unique angle behind Keep, just so you know the concept, is that we, instead of do an ad in your phone, which ads, as we all know, are annoying, right? I don't think anyone here has ever seen a mobile ad on their phone and intentionally went like this. Let me tap on that ad. No one wants to tap on an ad on purpose. So we realize that there's a big issue with advertising not being interruptive and actually being something that people want. So we changed the concept of an ad to a reward. So in effect, we are able to provide rewards, promotions, points, content as the value instead of an ad. So today, we are now in 11,000 apps, 100 million users across the globe. It's been a pretty fun ride. But I'm not here to tell you necessarily about Keep, although we are doing business here in Peru, and if you want to send us advertising dollars, I'm happy to take it. But I wanted to share with you some cheat codes. All right, so I'm going to start off, there's going to be 3 categories. I'm going to start off with cheat codes about you as an entrepreneurial thinker, right? All of you, at the end of the day, aspire to be or already are one, or have that in your blood. So that's the first category, is a few cheat codes on that. The second is on the industry overall and in business. And the last is going to be around others, working with others. I think as a community and as a group of people, we have a responsibility to grow together. So how can we, again, all grow together faster? So let me start off with some personal cheat codes. The first, and this is the most favorite in the book that people seem to really like, is to know your superpower. And what I mean by that is everyone has their strengths, everyone has their weaknesses. As we grow up, we focus a lot of time and energy on our weaknesses, right? On how to fix the things that we don't know how to do well, or things that just happen to be things we aren't good. For example, in school, you get a B or a C, you get all these tutors. We're called Asians, not Besians. So when we get a B, we failed. And the idea is a joke, I know. The idea here was, again, we put all our time into fixing our weaknesses. And I think we're energy allocation. There comes a point as you progress in your career to take all of your energy and apply to the things that you're very good at. So my superpower is I'm very good at getting people super excited about stuff. What my superpower isn't is math. I know it's hard to believe, but it's not math. And so I'm not going to focus all my energy on that. And there's going to be complementary superpowers. In fact, the best teams that I've seen in startups are the ones that have the most complementary superpowers, right? People that stay in their lane and know that they can respect their co-founders, that they are experts at those different areas. The biggest, most dysfunctional teams are the ones where everyone thinks that they're good at the same thing. And so I think having those complementary superpowers is one of the most important things. The second cheat code is to use what you have. Use what you have. And what I mean by this is, I think a lot of people like to take something that they think they don't have and they use it as a crutch. Or they, for example, me, I'm younger, I look young, people always ask the question, well, how do you get taken seriously when you go to meetings, right? And I had an investor that told me one day that I dressed like a high school kid. Like, sure, okay, whatever, great. But the fact is, the looking young is actually a huge advantage because you have the permission to ask as many questions as you want because people want to share with you, they want to teach you. They also underestimate you immensely, right? They think you are not capable or they don't think you understand. But the more you are underestimated, the more you can beat them, right? Because if you steamroll them, they're never going to expect it. And then most importantly, when you're younger, people expect you to be innovative and have unlimited energy, which is true. So use that to your advantage. And then also, people tell me sometimes, oh, I'm not from America. I didn't graduate from Stanford or Harvard or whatever it is. The good news is you come from another culture and another country. You understand now already another place. And as an American or someone who just grew up there, they may only understand America. Having as many different cultures in your understanding is the best way to create companies and concepts that can potentially transcend multiple cultures, multiple communities. These are all advantages. So take your weaknesses, what you think are weaknesses, and turn them into strengths, right? It's all about sort of this Jedi mind trick and focusing on that. The next, I think, it starts to touch into the entrepreneurial area, is the founder idea fit. I call it that. And what it is I find a lot of folks chase after the trendy ideas. You know, AI, ride sharing or sharing in general, the collaborative economy. Blockchain is the latest, right? Everyone's blockchain this, blockchain that. What happens is you didn't grow up working on blockchain. You didn't grow up working on the collaborative economy. There's things in your past that should be about your story. I think the most important thing in venture capital and entrepreneurship is really the story and how those things weave together. It isn't creating or fabricating a fake story, it's the real story. So it isn't completely accidental. There's a reason why I share with you my past. It's not an accident that I did graphic design and gaming and ended up working in a company that does advertising in games and has a design component to it, right? There's a lot of things that lead to where you are today. I'd encourage all entrepreneurs to look at their past, look at their family, look at what they seem to be spending most of their time doing. What are the things that contribute to the story so that it makes sense, right? If your family has a long history of real estate, a long history of farming, a long history of jewelry, whatever it might be, use that to your advantage. And don't just be like, I want to do blockchain, right? It doesn't work. It really doesn't work. People don't understand that fit. The next cheat code is around asking. Asking. Ask. Asking is a massive, massive tool, right? At the end of the day, if you don't know how to ask for help, no one knows how to help you. And I think it's a cultural thing too. In many ways, a lot of cultures are discouraged to ask, and you're discouraged to be the one who's out there. And for me, asking is honestly one of the best things that's ever happened to me. And the way I used to ask was a lot of cold emailing. So I don't know how many of you, you don't have to put a grab, but how many of you have guessed an email address and have cold emailed someone, right? The best thing ever. It's the first name dot last name at company.com. Right? That's it, right? And if it isn't, just guess other ones and put all the other guesses in the BCC field. Then they have no idea how desperate you were to reach them. But the whole point is you learn how to ask. And the best part about asking is if the answer was no. It's not like your life was any different before you asked the question. So why not ask? Why not ask that question? So for me, asking is so unbelievably powerful and so underrated. The next is to be inspired and to collect ideas and to make sure you're constantly learning, right? Constantly learning. I think for us, there's never an end to the learning, right? And what I mean is there's simple ways to do this. For me, why am I here in Peru? Because just in the 3 days I've been here so far, I've learned so much. There's so much more to learn. You're in a different place, a different culture, a different world in many ways, and to try to get into the minds of the people that grew up here think of things a certain way, for me, is fascinating, but gives me ideas. It fuels my ideas. That constant learning is absolutely critical. And this is the last for an entrepreneur, is to build. Building, executing. I think the number one track record an investor looks for, and you can disagree with me if you're not, you can find me later, is can you execute? Are you able to deliver, right? You can talk all you want, but the track record of execution is absolutely critical. And so to show that track record is important, right? I always tell entrepreneurs, when you start meeting an investor, you're never gonna get the money right away. I have never seen in the 8 years that we've been raising money and you show up and like, here's a term sheet, here's money right away. It doesn't happen. The relationship is built over time, right? But what happens is the relationship is built from you consistently demonstrating to them that you are able to execute. In fact, and please don't get mad at me, investors in the room, to the entrepreneurs, okay? Put everyone you meet today that are investors on an email list, okay? But not like an actual like MailChimp, smaller list, like 10 people-ish, 10 to 15. And email them once every 2 months. And give them an execution update. Say, here's what I did in the last 2 months. Here's how many customers we acquired. Here's how many press articles we got. Here's how many partnerships we created. Here's the product as we developed it. Don't ask for money, right? Just tell them what you've done. And in fact, the famous philosopher by the name of Ludicrous once said, if you ask for money, you get advice. You ask for advice, you get money. So just show them what you're able to do, and magical things can happen. So the next category I want to jump into is the industry. And this is around you as an entrepreneur and the thought process of the ideas that you're going to put together. And I think that sometimes, and it's related to the founder idea fit, is that we seem to be following a lot of trends, and the ones that are able to stand out are not necessarily the ones that do that. So the first I'd like to share is to create a new category. I know it's so easy for me to say, but let me explain. For Keep, I talked about it as mobile advertising, but when we first started pitching the idea, we created a category, we called it moments-based advertising. Targeting a moment. When someone is in a moment of achievement, a moment of joy, a moment of elation. We created this category, when really it's not like a new category, but it's like a new category, because we wanted people to think and know we were looking at the whole category in an entirely different way. And in many ways, when you create a new category, now you've found an area where there is not necessarily experts. I truly feel when there are too many experts, when there's too much data, when you can actually, as an entrepreneur, walk into a data source and see all the data that confirms to you that what you are doing is right, you are already too late. So creating a new category and finding areas that do not have experts is absolutely critical. And I think these are the things that investors ultimately are looking for. And if you want that outsized return, that's, at the end of the day, what people are looking for as well. And this is a part of thinking really, really big, right? When you're really big and you think about the category above, right? So for us, the idea of rewards in advertising isn't just about ads. It's about creating a rewards layer over the world. It's about allowing behaviors and things that you're doing to potentially be rewarded that aren't just on the phone, right? We started doing rewards in connected cars. We started doing rewards in connected devices like your watch and in your Fitbit. There's some amazing things that started to come with a bigger thinking category. And so I think the thinking big part is absolutely critical. And the last one on the industry, and I find this challenging with a lot of entrepreneurs, is don't be stealth. Don't be stealth. I think too often, and this is a cultural thing, and this is what I learned in Silicon Valley when I spent 7 years there, is everyone outside of the valley likes to say, oh, this is a secret idea. Like you have to sign an NDA. No one cares, right? It's not about hiding, it's about sharing. In fact, the more people you tell your idea to, the better. When I first started, I was telling my idea to everyone. My Starbucks barista, to the cab driver, to all of my friends, because I want to understand, is this a thing that you would want to use or that you would want to buy? Hiding it is only going to make it worse. So the hiding part is not actually advisable. All right, now I get to address the investors in the room. Hi, how are you? I want to give you the other side because I've worked with dozens of investors. I think we have 36 investors, something like that. We love you as the entrepreneur, and you hopefully love us. So I want to begin by reminding you that it's all about love. And in fact, as an investor, I have to explain that you need to fall in love with the idea and you need to fall in love with the entrepreneur. Now, I'm more addressing the earlier stage, folks. Later stage, you fall in love with the return. It's okay. But in the beginning, falling in love with the entrepreneur and the idea is the only way you can irrationally support this person over time. And this is really the most important thing, right? You want to be able to focus on the person and how you believe you can support them, and the love piece is important. What happens when you love something or someone? You're more forgiving, right? You're more able to irrationally support them. In the beginning, it's irrational. It's all about here. It's not about here. And that love has supported the entrepreneur and the investor relationship in the early years. The next is about consistency. Consistency in your brand. I cannot remind you enough that entrepreneurs, we do talk to each other. We gossip a lot, all the time. We have too much time. I'm kidding. No. What happens is we talk about what you provide. And I cannot stress enough the personal brand of the investor is critical, which comes from your consistent ability to deliver a certain angle. Are you from corporate? Do you understand big companies? Are you a good connector? Are you a partnerships person? Are you creative? Right? What are the things that you can provide beyond the green, beyond the money? And keep that brand consistent. Building that consistently as a track record over the years is the only way that deal flow will come to you, because the deal flow comes to you from people going, oh, this person knows this type of thing. So bam. And so that type of branding is critical. Branding is probably the most important thing for an investor, in my opinion. And by the way, what is brand? Brand, and this is branding 101, this is from marketing class, is a promise. A brand is a consistent promise. Any brand, Nike, Coca-Cola, every brand has a consistent promise. What is your consistent promise? So I'll end off, I have a few minutes, with some cheat codes about how we work with each other. I think collaboration is absolutely critical. These are things that I've learned from the last 8 years and spending some time in Silicon Valley. The first is to lose control. Lose control. Now, when I first started as an entrepreneur, and many of us are like this, we're all perfectionists. We want to make sure everything is perfect, right? You have this idea, you want to make sure that everyone does it the way you want it to be done. That perfection is dangerous because it's only your version of perfection. But what about other people's version of perfect? And I think what I've figured out is when you're able to lose control and let them pick their version of perfect, amazing things start to happen. And losing that perfectionist approach is absolutely important. I've got 2 more here. The second is my favorite, and this is around subservient leadership. Being a servant. As a leader, you're not everyone's boss. You're everyone's servant. And by letting them tell you what to do, amazing things start to happen. So for me, when I start spending time with my team, first of all, I can't tell them that I know everything because I don't. And you shouldn't have that attitude ever. But the other thing is saying, hey, you tell me, what do you need? What are your obstacles? How can I remove these obstacles? How can I give you more resources? That is absolutely one of the most important things. Is being able to serve people. And that is a new type of leadership that I think is emerging in companies around the world, is that I'm not here to sit on a pedestal to tell you what to do, you're there to tell me what to do. And I think that's the most important leadership lesson that I learned in the Valley and beyond. And this is the last one here, and then I've got one final one. And that's to show, is to show gratitude. So we're so spoiled in a way. Think about this for a second right now. We're all in a room. We're all learning about venture capital and entrepreneurship and how to support an innovation ecosystem. How fortunate are we to sit here, to spend our time thinking about that, when elsewhere in the world so many things are happening? So you have to understand that we have to use this privilege, and we shouldn't abuse it. My mom and dad, they came from Hong Kong, they immigrated to Canada. My dad is an accountant and my mom is a nurse. I asked them a few years ago, I said, why did you become an accountant and a nurse? And they said, simple, stability. We wanted to make sure that you and your brother, the only thing you ever had to worry about was to get good grades and to not get yelled at, right? And simply put, they wanted us to be able to have an environment to do what? To do boring things? To go off in our lives to create mediocre things? No. They did that so we had the room to grow and to do amazing things. So for us, our parents and their parents and our generations before us fought very hard to create an environment where we can actually innovate and create amazing things. And for you to do something boring is an insult. For you to do something amazing with that privilege, this platform that we have today, is absolutely important. I encourage you to do that. The last cheat code that I'll leave you with is generating serendipity, or generating luck. Many of us, I think, have this attitude of having luck happen to us, right? Right? I can't control it. Someone got lucky. You are the most powerful force in your life. No one cares about you as much as you care about yourself. You can push forward and create that luck. You open doors. You ask as many questions as you can. You ask. Pushing forward. That's the way that you can create that luck. So generating that serendipity is absolutely important. The other way to generate as much serendipity as possible is to be around people with the same mindset. Everyone in this room is here with a similar mindset. And collisions will happen, which is a term that Tony Hsieh uses, the guy who started Zappos. There's this idea that the more collisions that will occur here in this room, the more luck we will all create for each other. So I encourage you to find each other, don't be a stranger, and create as much serendipity and as much luck as possible for this industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brian. Invitamos a Debbie Jaffe, directora de Endeavor Perú, quien moderará la ronda de preguntas para Brian Wong. Si desean realizar alguna pregunta a Brian, los invitamos a hacerlo a través del Twitter con el hashtag PBCC.
Here we are. Thank you very much, Brian, for the great talk, and I really enjoyed reading your book, and it's great hearing some new cheats. So I took some notes, and I'm going to start asking some of the questions based on some of the things you talked about today, and asking specifically examples from your experience. You talked about being a subservient leader. Can you give us an example of something, an obstacle you removed for your team, or where you felt like you were really flexing that muscle?
Yeah, I think almost every day, I mean, even in our one-on-ones, the first question I ask is, what obstacles are you facing and what can I remove for you? So, just recently, one of our team, had a campaign that was running that had issues, and it was with a big brand, and they were saying, well, I need to get to the person who leads this account because there's some issues that came up. And I sent out 4 emails and got them the person that they needed to talk to, and I just supplied it to them. And so I think really at the end of the day, you can create a plan, you can tell people what to do, but if they are self-guided and autonomous, which is obviously the big asterisk, they can actually tell you what they need from you. And so we give enough time, I at least allocate enough time every day where I can work on tasks that my team has assigned to me. And this typically comes in through Slack, or through email, through text, or whatever it is. That's the #1 priority for me, is serving them.
Great. And I love the cheat about sending an email and guessing the addresses, first name, last name, first initial, last name. I know I've done that. What's the hardest thing you ever had to ask for, where you felt either embarrassed or it was just very hard for you?
I think if you're not uncomfortable every single day and asking uncomfortable questions, you're not challenging yourself enough. I encourage you to get used to it. It's a habitual thing, right? Once you're used to asking things that are uncomfortable, then you're not going to be doing it regularly. So once you've been able to do it all the time, your brain gets used to it, and then it just becomes natural. So I encourage you to do it. Literally right now. Could be the person next to you. Could how can I contact you? Can I text you? I'm kidding. I mean, not really kidding. You can do all sorts of stuff. And then who knows, if they say no, I'm not comfortable with that, then fine, right? And I think it's all about just asking a lot of, the most uncomfortable thing probably that I had to ask for, as a startup, you have a lot of near-death experiences, not a lot, like a few, and you have to ask for, I need help, right? We don't understand what the future looks like for us, and this was, obviously early on in the years when we started, and you'd be surprised that in these moments when you are truly at risk and are needing true help, the investors that stand up for you, that are supporting you, are the ones that truly want you to succeed. So it's really important to know who those people are that stood up and were willing to stick their heads out to help you during that time.
That's a great example, and you mentioned investors, and I imagine you had mentors and directors as well. In one of your last tweets about don't be stealth, I love that one too. I feel like in Silicon Valley there is a culture of NDA. There's less of a culture of that in Peru, shockingly, but I still feel like there's a little bit of I don't want someone to steal my idea. You touched on that a little bit. Can you expand a little bit more on an entrepreneur who may be afraid that someone's going to steal their idea by sharing?
Unless you truly have invented alchemy, it doesn't matter. Because it's all about, everyone has probably heard this or maybe not, but the execution is the most important, right? And in fact, I have this thing where if I had an idea, and I have a lot of ideas, you have a lot of ideas, and I'm sure and if someone else makes it and they do it better, fair game. They won. They executed better than I could, right? And I think the competition is not about who comes up with the idea first. In fact, the idea would probably already have existed before. There's no such thing really, in my opinion, as new ideas. It's that whoever ends up executing it better than you is the one who will win. And that's the most important. The more afraid you are, the more NDAs you make people sign, you're so worried about protecting it, you're not worried about actually making sure the idea works, or that there's a market for it, and that there's a match between the product and the market. So that is the number one thing you need to qualify, and the only way you're going to do that is to show it to the customers that could potentially buy your product. The easiest test is to go to a potential customer, sort of pretend that the product is already done, right? And then say, would you buy this? And if they say, nah, then you probably have to change some things. And they say, yes, I would buy it right now. I'd be like, oh no, we're still beta testing right now. We'll come back to you in a month. You can always come up with excuses, but the way is to always find and qualify for people who would potentially buy your product and buy it consistently. That is the best group of people to make sure you spend time with.
Thanks. Well, I'm going to jump to some cheats that you have in the book that maybe touched on a little today. One is about failure. So you say, if you're not failing on occasion, you're not aiming high enough. And that definitely speaks to getting out of your comfort zone. In some cultures, failure, and you mentioned this in your talk, is not received as comfortably as it is in Silicon Valley. In fact, we know in Silicon Valley that if you've had failed startups, it's sort of like a badge of honor when you go to investors. I think in Peru, we even haven't had as much time in the ecosystem to have as many failures, but what would you say to entrepreneurs in the audience who are maybe don't come from that culture where failure is considered an honor in some ways?
So it's okay if you don't like failure. Just don't use the F word, right? So avoid the F word. I like to call it a lucky opportunity to learn, because if you didn't make that mistake, right, you wouldn't have had the opportunity to truly experience what it feels like to make that mistake. As long as you don't make it twice, you're okay, right? That's the most important thing about mistakes and learning. So I think failure is synonymous with learning. I will say though, this is kind of a misconception in my opinion, and that is, yes, certainly in certain failed situations, the failed startup is a badge of honor, but more often than not, it's a cause for questions. Why did this happen? What about it led to the startup to not succeed? If it was less about the entrepreneur and more about the industry or more about the environment, then maybe. If it had anything to do with the entrepreneur, then it becomes a big question mark. And I think for you, the best way to get over that is to know you put every ounce of your body, all of your energy, all of your soul into it. Then you know there will be never any regrets because you did everything you could. If you didn't do everything you could, you will regret it if you ever fail.
Well, I think that's good advice for the investors here as well, is in looking at a prior startup or other endeavor experience that they had, is looking at the reasons that the entrepreneur didn't succeed.
A quick point on that. My favorite line from one of my favorite investors, John Callahan from True Ventures, is ideas fail, but people don't. So if you invest and back the right entrepreneur, yes, maybe the idea will fail, but they will ultimately persevere, and you are trying to find the type of entrepreneur that will make sure that they persevere beyond all of these challenges every day.
Great. I want to take a look at some of the tweets and see if there's any questions. I'm not checking my WhatsApp. I'm seeing anything up here. It's mostly just tweets, not so many questions, so I think we'll go on. Yeah.
I can answer something while you're looking it up.
So one of my favorite cheats is directed at both, I think, the entrepreneurs and the investors in the audience, which is don't treat people with money and power like God. And you want to say, there's an exchange. So for the investors, they're the people with the money, and the entrepreneurs are the people with the ideas, and that's a pretty fair exchange. And so for the entrepreneurs, these are just a few of the people lining up to give you money. In Peru, there is actually a lot of angel money, and there's less at the venture stage. So how do we address that here, where some money early on, less money at the venture stage available both locally and regionally for Peruvian entrepreneurs?
As I mentioned earlier, you use what you have. There's a lot of angel investors. You build trust, you build these relationships, and you bring in a bunch of angels to try to fund you whatever is available at the time. But I think for entrepreneurs, the ultimate warning, and this is sort of just a nice perspective overview, is that sometimes we expect the investor, because they have money, to know what they're doing. It's not true. And you guys know what I'm talking about. And the thing is, sometimes as well when you pitch, the investor might not like the idea because they just don't understand it. Or maybe this is not where they come from. It's not their background. It doesn't mean your idea is bad. It doesn't mean you have to change what you're doing. You will always know what you're doing better than anyone else. And that's the expertise and the depth of what you're doing that they're trusting in. And so I think the most dangerous thing is an entrepreneur I've seen go pitch an investor goes, oh, I don't like this and that, and then they change it. And they come back, they're like, oh, look, I changed it for you. Oh, look at that. And then they still say no. It's the most devastating thing, right? You should never, ever change the root or the core of your idea just because some investors told you so. You should always make decisions on your own accord, and that's the most important thing.
Well, and that goes to your other cheat, which is choose your investors wisely. And I think that's important in Peru, in anywhere you are, and whatever level of investor.
I'll leave you with this point, we're out of time, which is the longest investor I've had on my board for 6.5 years. Okay? 6.5 years. That is longer than any relationship I've ever been in, other than with, obviously, my family. And I will tell you, it is like getting married. That's why I talked about the love part, right? You literally need to wake up. You need to think. Basically, this is the number one filter. Ready? Both entrepreneur and investor. Can you look this person in the eye, be like, I would love to spend every week of my life with you for the next 6 years of my life? If the answer is yes, then take it. If the answer is no, you should rethink it. It's about consistency, tolerance, all the things that come with love, and all the things that come with a relationship. Just remember, it's very, very similar. And that's the number one way, I think, to look at it.
Well, thank you, Brian. And I sort of end the same way that you ended, which is, we're here at this conference during the networking. Make your own luck through your serendipitous connections. And looking forward to meeting everybody in the networking. Thank you.
Thank you.